Imagine a world, maybe not so different from ours, where the head of the family, the patriarch or matriarch, doesn't just get old, but actually thrives. We're talking healthy, sharp, active, guiding their family, not just into their 90s, but like 120.
It's a fascinating thought experiment.
But what would that actually mean, though, beyond just one person living a long time?
Wow.
What are the ripples, for the family, for society, maybe even for, like, human civilization itself?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into this.
Okay.
Because the source we're diving into today, Master's Insight, #187, suggests this isn't just about adding years. It's potentially a complete rewrite of how our basic structures work.
Right.
So our mission here is to unpack how this one thing, extreme, healthy longevity, could basically change everything we assume about legacy, wisdom, even progress.
And it's quite a premise. What strikes me immediately about the source is how it doesn't get bogged down in just how we live that long. It jumps straight to the what if.
Yeah, the consequences.
Yeah, exactly. The societal shift. It forces you to think about the impact of having that kind of sustained active wisdom around, not just a longer biological clock ticking.
And those impacts sound huge. So let's start there with the closest circle, the family itself. What does the source say this means for a family with such a figurehead? He calls them an ageless compass.
Ageless compass. That's a great phrase, isn't it? It really nails the stability aspect.
How so?
Well, think about families now. There's often, turbulence around succession, managing wealth across generations, resolving arguments, usually happening after someone passes or when they're perhaps not fully capable anymore.
Right.
But picture a sharp, lucid 120-year-old still actively making decisions. That gives you this incredible long-term stability, like spanning multiple generations currently.
So it's not just fuzzy feelings, it's practical stuff, like avoiding bad investments or fights over the family farm.
Precisely. Big financial moves, managing land, investments. These really crucial family assets wouldn't get chopped up or mismanaged like they sometimes do when leadership changes quickly or someone dies young. The source argues pretty strongly that this continuous, respected authority makes family decisions much more stable. It acts like a living constitution for the family.
Okay.
And that really cuts down on internal fights, those awful property disputes that can just, wreck relationships. Having someone with that huge perspective, seeing booms and busts, societal changes, provides a really solid anchor for everything the family does.
That continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And okay, here's where I find it fascinating. Imagine generations learning directly from that single living source, not just stories, but actual ongoing guidance.
Oh, absolutely. That's not just stability. That's like an unbroken river of knowledge.
Yeah.
Consider the time frame. Someone living to 120 has personally seen, guided, maybe shaped 4 or 5 generations. So great-grandkids, maybe even great-great-grandkids, aren't just hearing secondhand tales. They're getting direct mentoring life lessons from the person who started it all, relatively speaking. The source really emphasizes this, that deep knowledge, that wisdom, wouldn't get lost in these generational gaps it talks about.
Right, the stuff that usually gets forgotten or has to be relearned.
Exactly. Instead, the family's culture, its core values, its whole spirit, it gets passed down in its original flavor, as the source puts it.
Original flavor, I like that.
It implies this authenticity of tradition that's almost hard to imagine now when each generation often feels like it's starting over in some way.
Okay, so there's the wisdom, the culture. But what about the more tangible side? Wealth, capital. How does that long-term leadership affect a family's money and power?
That's a huge point. And it definitely has wider implications. Think about a typical family today. Wealth gets built up, then often gets split, maybe diluted when parents pass away, and it's divided among kids.
Yeah, standard inheritance.
But with a long-lived patriarch, the family's assets stay managed as one unit, strategically, for decades longer. It avoids that premature splitting up of capital.
Okay.
And the source is pretty direct here. It says these families would inevitably become corporate-like. It uses the term kucho, which is sort of like becoming a financial conglomerate, a really powerful group.
So more than just rich.
Yeah.
Influential.
Way beyond what ordinary families could manage. They could make these super long-term investments, set up foundations, fund things that need patience, spanning lifetimes. It consolidates resources and power in a way that creates a massive advantage.
That really shifts the perspective. The family isn't just like a personal unit anymore. It's this enduring economic engine. Okay, so let's zoom out then. If this is happening within families, how does that kind of longevity and leadership change society overall. It can't just stop at the front door, right?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the source paints this really vivid scene of a totally new kind of society.
Go on.
Imagine this being normal. The 120-year-old patriarch, their 90-year-old son still active, a 60-year-old grandson at the peak of their career, a 30-year-old great-grandson starting out, maybe even a 10-year-old great-great-grandchild.
Wow, 5 generations interacting daily.
Exactly. 5 generations under one roof.
We shi tong tong, as the source puts it. That would completely reshape social ethics, our ideas about aging, adulthood, community structures.
So getting older wouldn't mean stepping back.
Quite the opposite. Age would become a marker for different respected roles. Everyone contributes based on their experience. It fundamentally changes how we view engagement across a whole lifespan.
Okay, so leadership doesn't just stay within the family walls, it extends out.
Yeah, that's the next logical step. If these patriarchs are staying healthy and lucid, their influence naturally grows.
How so?
Well, we wouldn't just be the family core, they'd become these respected societal sages, almost naturally.
Their influence, built over a century of watching and doing, would reach into local politics, big industry decisions, bringing that historical context, mediating disputes, maybe even becoming like living libraries of cultural heritage. And the source has this really powerful concept. If lots of families had these figures, society could enter what it calls an era of elder wisdom, like zihui shide.
An era of elder wisdom.
Yeah, it's not just about respect your elders. It implies a systemic shift. Leadership, long-term planning, it's all guided by this unprecedented depth of lived experience. Decisions would just be deeper.
And I guess all that stability, that wisdom,
Yeah.
it must add up to something bigger for society, like overall stability, prosperity.
For sure. Think about the chaos we sometimes see now, rapid shifts in leadership, changing values, constantly reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, things feel pretty reactive sometimes.
Well, these long-lived patriarchs could act as like massive stabilizers against that. They're the living memory, the continuity that stops society from just lurching around reactively. The source basically argues that super stable families create super stable social units. And that foundation, plus the foresight guiding decisions, strengthens everything: social wealth, culture. It leads to a more prosperous, resilient society, one that can actually tackle long-term problems with the kind of calm that comes from deep experience.
This is really elevating the whole idea. It takes us to the biggest scale. What does all this stored wisdom, this deep stability, mean for human progress?
Yeah.
For civilization itself, it sounds like a totally different path for humanity.
It really does. And the source kind of grounds this by looking back. It points out something we maybe don't think about enough: how progress has always been sort of capped by the lifespan of our best minds.
How so?
Think of geniuses, sages, innovators. They die, and sometimes their insights get lost or aren't fully developed or passed on. Knowledge gaps appear. Civilization slows down, or even stalls, because we keep losing our most advanced thinkers too early.
Okay, I see that. So the big what if is, what if these figures, these brilliant minds, didn't disappear so soon? What if living to 120, healthy and contributing, became common?
The predictions the source makes are, well, they're potentially revolutionary. If this happened widely, humanity would basically have legions of living encyclopedias.
Living encyclopedias.
Yeah. Imagine the sheer amount of knowledge, experience, interconnected ideas just retained and actively shared, not just sitting in books.
Right.
Innovation, wisdom, it would build exponentially, generation on generation, instead of constantly being lost and found again. The source even suggests this continuity could speed up civilizational progress, potentially tenfold or more.
Tenfold. That's huge.
It is. It paints this picture of humanity advancing like never before. Not just, standing on the shoulders of giants, but having those giants actively mentoring and collaborating across centuries, pushing boundaries in science, art, philosophy, governance. Just continuous, unbroken growth.
Wow. This deep dive into master's insight, #187. It really opens up a whole new perspective on longevity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just personal, it's a societal force.
Definitely.
The source gives us this really powerful vision. The 120-year-old healthy, sharp patriarch as a shared dream for families, a huge stabilizer for society, and an incredible accelerator for civilization. It kind of boils down to wisdom doesn't get lost, family resources and purpose don't just vanish, and human creativity builds up over generations in a way that's almost hard to grasp right now. So the question becomes, what does this mean for you listening right now?
Yeah, and that maybe brings us to a final thought. If this kind of long, healthy, lucid life did become widespread, what parts of our own lives, our families, our society, would you most want to see protected or maybe strengthened by that kind of enduring active wisdom?
Right.
And conversely, what parts might you expect or even hope would be radically changed? It's a future that forces us to think not just about how long we live, but maybe more importantly, how we'd live together with the wisdom of ages actively among us.